Hello again and welcome back to the third installment as we look through all four of the conferences in the 2016 Super Rugby season. Today we make our way over to South Africa for the first of the two African conferences in the South Africa group. Today we'll be looking at Africa 1, which has four teams: the Bulls, the Cheetahs, the Stormers and the Sunwolves from Japan. Plenty to look through here in this one. This is going to be an interesting pool. Not quite as strong, I don't think, as Africa 2. For good reason, as we'll go through over the next couple of episodes of this series. And now that we're over on this side of the two groups as well, keep in mind that only 3 teams will come out of these two conferences into the playoffs. The two conference winners, of course, and the next best placed side when those two pools combine together as well. So it's interesting for South African sides here that they have a lot less chance to get into the playoffs in the season. Is it deserved? Is it not deserved? The jury is still out. South African teams stretched even further now with a 6th side in these two conferences. So we're going to kick things off here, starting alphabetically as we always do, with the Bulls coming in to Africa 1. And how does their team look? How does it step up? How does it rate with the rest of these teams? We're going to kick things off in the front row here, and there's plenty of changes with a number of players making their way out of this Bulls propping unit. They've lost 4 players: Berwinkle, Mallet, Van der Westhuizen and Van Wyk, all making way out. One of them retiring, that's Mallet, but we also have a couple going back to their Currie Cup sides not required this season, and Van Wyk off to Japan to play there, but they've got replacements coming in, 3 of them all coming from Currie Cup sides. But the real question is, how much are these guys going to make an impact in this Bulls front row? They really need to find, that killer play, that strength that is the South African forwards. Now, they've got a few players who have stuck around here who are going to be really, really important. Dean Grayling, Trevor Nyakane, and of course Marcel van der Merwe. They're going to be 3 big names, I think, that the Bulls will look for in their propping unit. Their hookers haven't changed at all, and again, there's one name here that stands head and shoulders above the rest. That is Arjan Strauss. Of course, the Springbok, he's going to be massive if these Bulls are going to go well. They still have Marku there as a backup alongside the 2 Visagis, Kelly and Yarko, giving them 4 hookers to go with all those props as well. Strong looking front row for the Bulls. In the second row there's a lot of changes though, with 3 big names losing out here from the Bulls team. Victor Matfield, the biggest of all, of course, away to Northampton, and Flip van der Merwe off to Clermont. Big losses as well. Snyman back to the Currie Cup. They have picked up a couple players from the Blue Bulls. Herbston Jenkins make their way into the team, but it's going to come down to the players who have stuck around once again. Van Rensburg and Hadding are going to be so important in the second row for the Bulls. Moving on to the back row, and there's plenty of changes here as well for the Bulls, as they've really struggled to deal with all the changes, and they're looking very, very local here to try and make up where they've lost players. Jacques Duplessis and Willan Liebenberg have gone to Montpellier. Jacques Engelbrecht as well has left the team to the Kings, and of course the biggest of all, Pierre Spies off to Japan as well. So they're big losses, especially Spies, who is a fantastic number 8. Although they've picked up Nick Diega from the Saracens and a couple of players again from the Currie Cup, with Kirsten and Ngonza coming into the side alongside those key names again. Arno Botha, he's going to be big. Lapis Labasanche, who's actually undergone a bit of an injury, which might see him miss some early rounds of Super Rugby. And of course, Deon Stegman is going to be big as well. He's come along quite nicely over the last few seasons. We always know that South Africa is going to be there or thereabouts when it comes to their forward packs. That is where they always excel, whether it's players up from Currie Cup or not, whether it's season internationals. You know that South Africa will give you a very good, tough battle up front. But it's the backs that technically they can at times struggle. But I think this Bulls team doesn't look too bad. We look at their scrum halves first off, and they've added Lancel from the Blue Bulls, another man up from the Currie Cup, but it's what they've got already there with Rudy Page and Francois Hogard, the key frontrunners for that number 9 jumper. We all know the versatility of Francois Hogard, and he's going to be massive and big for the Bulls, as well as his sevens time as well will make him a very hot target for the Bulls to get going in their systems. We move out to fly half, and of course, normally you'd look at this and say they're not too badly placed with Andre Pollard, of course, the number 1 go for the Bulls, but with him injured for quite a number of weeks, couple of months even, it really puts the pressure now on the others. They've got Francois Brummer there, as well as Schumann and Stander, but how are they going to go? Coming up again from Currie Cup Rugby, it's a big step up to Super Rugby, and I think Brummer surely has to be the one to do something special. We've seen him before around the traps, but can he step up to Super Rugby for the Bulls? And it may be as who they've left behind that may come to bite them the most. They're getting rid of Jacques Louis Potgieter to Lyon, which was a big loss because he did show some very promising touches last season in the number 10 jumper. He could have been a really important piece of the Bulls' puzzle had he stayed with the side. We move into their centres now, and there's more names leaving here. JJ Ungelbrich, the biggest of them all, off to the Ospreys. That's a big loss to them, but they've recruited again from the Blue Bulls locally with Dan Krill and Dres Swanepoel coming into the side. So with that there, that does put pressure on the incumbents, the ones that have stood out before, and Jan Serfontaine and of course Jesse Krill, one of the breakout players of last season internationally. He had a fantastic year all through Springboks and Super Rugby. He made a real name for himself, did Jesse Krill. He's got to be massive again for the Bulls, because they can't rely on these backup guys early on. They need Serfontaine and Krill to do the job for the Bulls if they're going to have any chance of topping this pool. Into the back three, and there's a couple of names that have left the team. Of course, the biggest of all is Zinangani, who has retired from rugby with the Bulls. They've picked up a couple of players again, local players from the Bulls and the Kings coming in, but again, it's going to be the form of Bjorn Gasson. It's going to be the biggest thing of all for the Bulls. You've got to go with these players that have done it before. You've got to look at players who are going to come through the ranks and prove themselves over the season. It's hard to see any of these guys busting straight through into the spotlight of Super Rugby in the first couple of rounds. Also, Jurgen Visser gone to the Kings. Our fullbacks, it doesn't look too promising for the Bulls, with just Gallant and Duncan Matthews listed as fullbacks, but we know Basson can cover back there as well, and plenty of other players on the wings that are really going to have to lift this team with some electric play for the Bulls. There's a lot of plus and minuses for this Bulls team. I think where they're going to look to attack teams and look to assert their dominance is going to be in the centres, and two men, Serfontaine and Krill, they're the big guns. They have to really lead the team forward, charging through the centre of the park. Of course, their losses and their down points is going to be a fly half. With the injury, of course, Andre Pollard is going to be huge, and teams are going to target that early on in the season. It could see them, drop a lot of matches that Pollard offensively could have really directed them forward. I'm picking the Bulls to finish third in this 14 pool, 14 conference, I should call it. But I do like what they've done here. They've recruited all their replacement players locally, especially from the Currie Cup and the Blue Bulls. A few of them from outside, but mainly it's Blue Bulls players that have come up into the Super Rugby team. The injury of Pollard, as I said before, going to be massive. That's going to be possibly the biggest road bump in their early season play. Can they come back when he comes into form and back into the team? Will be interesting to see. It's going to rely on players from the Blue Bulls coming up from the Currie Cup to step up, and we'll quickly find out who can do that and who can't. And it's not only the players that have been recruited up from the Blue Bulls, also a change in the coaching staff of Franz Ludick going to be the assistant for Fiji, and of course who else has come up but Nolis Marius from the Blue Bulls to coach the side for 2016. Okay, so I'm not thinking too much of the Bulls this year by that squad, but I think it's something, again, like we've seen from other sides, young squad can definitely improve over the next couple of years. Now we move on to the Cheetahs for 2016, and well, they had a dreadful 2015, didn't they? And they made a number of changes here in their squad. Is it going to be enough to lift them up to the next level? Personally, I don't think so, but we're going to have a look at what they have managed in the transfers this year. Starting with the front row, and they've just named 4 props for their squad, losing a number of players going away out of the team. 2 Stenhazen's leaving. Of course, Courtney and Stenhazen, the biggest of them all, off to the Sharks. They have picked up Kutzea from Breve. He's going to be a good welcomed addition, but just 4 front rowers, and there's no real names that you're going to look at and go, he's Super Rugby talent, we know what he can do. Of course, there's Kutzea, Minnie, Yus, and Van Dyke leading this team from the front. They need support big time from the men behind them, and they need some experience as well, which in the front row is pretty crucial. Moving to the hookers in the squad, and 2 of them, of course, have been released from the team, but they have recruited 1 back, and that is from the Stormers. Rudon Bach coming into the team as hooker. He'll partner alongside Huggett and Van Jansfield to give them 3 for the 2016 season. But as I said earlier, you kind of know with South Africa that they're going to keep producing quality front rowers and quality forwards, and I expect that to come true here with a lot of these guys who will probably prove to be fairly decent players by the end of Super Rugby this year. Into the second row here for the Cheetahs, and just 1 man has departed, and that's Stephen Sykes, who's gone to the Kings for 2016. But they know they have 1 man who has to lead this forward pack. Simply put, Lud Diego has to be the number 1 man in this pack. Again, not a huge amount of experience around him. Francois Hughes has to be big, as well as Carl Wegner. They're the established players. Numbers coming in as well, who didn't see any game time last year. Costa and Serfontaine in the second row need to do the job and develop themselves. Like we've seen from the Bulls, the Cheetahs are establishing a lot of new players. Into the back row here for the Cheetahs, and it's somewhere where they can really look to use any experience they have got. They have a few players leaving, none more so than Heinrich Brousseau, who's away to Japan, but they have picked up Paul Schumann from the Kings to partner alongside some decent names of Berger, Brits, Maholje, Oliver Prinsloo, and Venter in the team for the back row. Number 8, Jean Cook is off to Zebri, and that leaves just Neil Jordan to fill the role there. But some decent back rowers for the Cheetahs that they'll look to exploit. Likes of Prinsloo, he's built well over the last few seasons as well. Could be a big name for the Cheetahs this year. Now we move into the back line, and we start with the scrum halves, of course, as always, and there's a big loss here to the Cheetahs with one of those inspirational names that really starred a couple of seasons ago. Cyril Pretorius is off to the Newport Gwent Dragons. He'll be a big loss for the team. They just have Sean Venter and Tian Meyer in the team as scrum halves. Probably an area they're going to struggle with, especially when you go outside that and look at the fly halves that have left the team. Of course, Francois Brummer, who we just mentioned, off to the Bulls. Willie Duplessis off to Toulon. Joe Peterson away to the Sharks. And Alga Watts back to the Kings. That's 4 pretty decent Super Rugby players as well. That could have been a big use for them. But I think this is where they've recruited possibly the best. Bring in Sai Severson from the Force and Fred Zallinga from the Sharks. That is a very good recruitment. They'll partner along Marius as well, but that's 2 good names. And the number 10 jumper that is going to prove a good purchase for the Cheetahs. Into the centres, and they have lost just 1 man, Johan Sardi, making his way out to France as well. William Smith coming in from the Bulls, so that's 1 signing that has some Super Rugby experience, but this is an area where they might really struggle again with depth. They're going to have to rely on the outside backs, possibly to cover. Francois Venter could be a name that they'll look to use there in the centres for the Cheetahs. But it is their outside backs, I think, where they could really cause some trouble. And when you look at it as well as who they've lost, names like Cornell Hendricks and Villiers Leroux, who've gone to the Stormers and the Sharks respectively, are big names to lose. But when you look, you got Rhino Benjamin, Raman Rule, and Clayton Blumenties. They're good players that can break a game open at a moment's notice. So that's a big changes for the Cheetahs. Some key names, some big names that they've relied on in the past have departed the team, and they'll be looking now to new, fresh, young faces doing the job. Of course, it can't get much worse than what it did in 2015, so you got to give them credit for putting it out there and looking to boost the side. Nakadowski has left the team as coach as well, retiring from the coaching staff, and of course his assistant Franco Smith has taken his place at the Cheetahs. I don't expect their season to get any better than it did in 2015. I think they'll finish 4th in Africa 1. Their big problems is going to be scrum halves. Massive loss for a team that relied on the player like Cyril Pretorius to direct the side. He was really a real conductor of the forwards and the backs alike, and without those experienced names at number 10, they're going to have to get a new combination with unknown scrum halves, and these players coming in looking to establish themselves could be an issue for the Cheetahs. Big loss of players as well, like Willie LaRue, Cornell Hendricks, Johan Sardi, Joe Peterson as well. Lots of big names that have departed this team. Where they'll look to be strong is just these X-Factor players like Rano Benjamin, Raymond Rule, and Clayton Blumenties, who can bust the game open at a moment's notice. Is it going to be enough for them? I don't really think so, but they can hope and they can wish. Luttiega is going to be massive. He has to step up. Boom Prinsloo as well as Maholje and the forwards have to do big things for the Cheetahs. Alright, so we're already halfway through this conference. Makes it a bit quicker when there's only 4 teams to have a look at in Africa 1 and Africa 2. But we move our way down to the Stormers, the third side in Africa 1. And we have a look at who they've picked up. I really like the Stormers. I think they're a good side. They had to go through a lot of reconstruction a couple of years ago, and I think they may well start to see some more results after a pretty decent season. The best South African side of 2015. So let's kick things off here. Starting, of course, in their front row. Couple players departing. Big as all, Stephen Kitshoff. He's been with the team for quite some time now. Established as a just about international level front rower. Playing for, of course, the Springboks recently as well. He's off to Bordeaux. They've picked up a couple of good replacements with Van Rensburg coming in from Bane and JP Smith from the Brumbies. Alongside them, Vincent Koch, who's been one who the Springboks have also taken interest in. Frans Maholbe, another one who's played for South Africa. So a very good looking front row. Alistair Vermaak, another one who's established front rower for the Stormers. Something they've been working on, these youngsters that are really starting to come to fruition. And the hookers, one man has departed. That is Neil Rittenbach, who has gone to the Cheetahs. They still have some pretty good talent there. Ntabini, Williamsey, and Mbanambi, who will be another one who's really developed nicely over the last year or so. The second row is somewhere the Stormers have generally pretty well excelled at, and I don't think 2016 is going to be much different. Even losing Rohan Bulfer to the Sharks and Manya Kariza to Racing 92. But again, recruited very well, especially with Peter Steph du Toit, who has really been a great player over the last year. He's going to be massive. Imagine him partnering Ebenezer Beef will be massive. A couple players coming in from Western Province as well to bolster this team. But all in all, it's going to come down to du Toit and Beef, who are going to lock and load this second row big time for the Stormers. Into the back row, and Michael Rhodes and Dane Vermeulen have made way off to the Saracens and Toulon respectively. Jacques Vermeulen coming in from Western Province to replace those two, but they've got plenty of talent there, which I think is another place where they could really excel, and another place where their young talent through Western Province has built them well. Of course, Goldberger, we all know what he can do, but it's the likes of Elstad, Khaleesi, and Carr that will be the ones coming through the system that are really starting to establish themselves as good Super Rugby players. Moving into the back line now, we start ourselves with the scrum halves. There's no one actually leaving. They've actually named 5 scrum halves, with it is Jana Vermaak coming in from Toulouse and Justin Phillips coming in from Western Province as well. But it's the ones already there that will be the ones to keep their claim. Nick Groom and Louis Schroeder will be the key men and the number 9 jumper for the Stormers. Moving outside one to the fly halves, and Dimitri Katsakilis is the one to disappear from 2015. He's off to Montpellier, but they've picked up Jean-Luc Duplessis, of course, from Western Province as well, another local player, but he'll partner alongside Kurt Coleman, one who's been very well groomed up through the ranks as well of South African rugby. They've also got Rhino Eckstein and Robert de Preer, who will look to fill that number 10 jumper. Somewhere they could find a bit wanting for the Stormers, but we'll get to that later on. In the centres, and this is where they're going to be massive. Of course, one man leaving, that is Jean de Villiers. The big legend of himself is away from his beloved Stormers. They've picked up Daniel du Plessis instead from Western Province, once again keeping it local. But look at the names we've already got here. Damien Dialandi, Juan de Jong, Hugh Jones and Jaco Tauta. Big names, 4 big name players who can do the job here for the Stormers. I'm expecting big things from their centres. The outside backs have a couple of changes. Patrick Howard making his way out to the Northampton Saints. But big name coming in is Cornell Hendricks. That is a massive transfer. We know what a finisher Cornell Hendricks is. He'll line up alongside Dylan Ludes, Johnny Kotza, of course, the amazing Sevens exponent, Sebilo Sinatla. He is an absolute lightning quick man. Sinatla will, hopefully, from a fan's perspective, set the competition alight for the Stormers. That could be a big one for them this season. Cheslin Colby, another one who could really set this competition alight. We've seen glimpses of how good he is in recent years as well. It changed the coaching staff of Alistair Coetzee making way out and Robbie Fleck coming in. Name from the past, of course, from assistant coach coming into full-time for the Stormers. Now the Stormers I am picking to be number 1 in Africa 1. The top place side, it's because their strengths are where they have their key players in mostly key positions, especially the centres. A very good front row, a good back row, an exceptional second row as well. They have good scrum halves, a very exciting centre pairing, and of course the amazingness out in the wing with the likes of Cornell Hendricks and Sinatla as well could be massive. So it's just key players in key positions that can win matches. And the experience as well, which we haven't seen from South African teams too much so far in these squads. It's Super Rugby experience, players who have been there and done that. And also the electricness of these backs, you know, the Dialandis, the De Jongs, the Tautas, the Hendricks, the Cheslin Colbys and Sinatlas, to name just a few that can carve this up. I think where they could be exposed is that fly half, where it's going to be relied on players like du Plessis, Eckstein, Coleman and de Preer to do the job. 4 named there. Who's going to be the number 1? Coleman very much rotated in the team a lot last season. Could he be the one to initially take that number 10 jumper? So again, picking them to come first. Plenty of changes, but a very good overall squad from the Stormers. And of course, last but certainly not least, is the Sunwolves coming in from Japan. Part of the expansion, one of the new sides into the competition. Let's have a look at who they've picked up and how I think they're going to go this season. They've kept their team very much localized, with a lot of players coming in from Japan and a lot of them international representatives as well. Inagaki, Kakinaga and Makami will be the key components for this front row of the Sunwolves, with caps alongside Miyakami. 32 for him. He's got to be a big name that they'll look to use quite a lot throughout the season. We know all about one man who's been at Super Rugby level before. That is Shota Horia, of course, with 42 Japanese caps to his name. He is one experienced component at this level. Of course, there's another couple here who've played for Japan as well that are going to be key for them. Arita and Kisu are going to be massive parts of their season. Kisu's played 41 times for Japan, so they've really got an international vibe to their whole front row. And the second row is somewhere where they've looked outside of the Japanese leagues and somewhere where they've really done well to strengthen what could be a weak area of their team, picking up Tim Bond and Luaki Moli from Bay of Plenty and Auckland. I think Tim Bond is very underrated second rower, and Moli has proven very good over the last 2 years. Young player who's developed quite nicely and will be a big asset to this Japanese Sunwolves side. There's one man here for the Sunwolves that is going to be massive, and that is Hitoshi Ono. He is the most capped Japanese player in their history. 96 caps to his name. He has been a massive part of their international game, and I expect him to be the same here for the Sunwolves. We look to their back row, and as we know with the Japanese international side, this is somewhere where they do struggle to fill the void locally with their own players. And again, just like we see internationally with the likes of Hendrik Tui coming in and really strengthening that back row for Japan, we see the same here for the Sunwolves. They've picked up 4 players outside of Japan, but most notably Ed Quirk, Limalu, and Leonardi from Argentina. Limalu is from Samoa internationally as well, and Ed Quirk from Australia, the Reds, transferring his way to the Sunwolves. Along with that, they've also picked up an American international, Andrew Durutalu, coming into the back row naming. Now that's very, very strong and very, very well played from the Sunwolves. Into the back line now, and we have a look at their scrum halves. There's 2 names you can expect to lead from the front here. Haiwasa will be one man with 51 caps to his name for Japan, who they'll look to use quite a lot, I'd imagine. Another one that will back him up quite nicely is Yuki Yatomi, who will be another one with 14 caps for Japan, will be another big name for them. Couple of backups as well, coming in locally from the Kabuto Spears and the Green Rockets. Could learn a lot and really left the development of Japan is going to prove a big international exponent into the future for Japanese rugby. Onto their fly halves, and I think this is one of the areas that they could really be strong. Picking up Tusi. Now he's a very, very good player as Tusi, and outside him Tarikawa, who's very, very versatile, but we know how good he is as he really shone in the latest 2015 Rugby World Cup. So that's, I think, an area of strength for the Sunwolves is their fly halves. Outside them in the centres, and there's a couple of names that you'll want to remember. Derek Carpenter, recruited from the ITM Cup, away to play in Japan. Now he's there with the Sunwolves. And another one of international experience will be Yu Tamura, who has 34 international caps to his name and will be one they'll look to partner alongside the likes of a Carpenter or a Paya or a Yamanaka, who could be the keys for them. In the centres, they've got to have that solidness. The defensive line has to be good, and they can rely on their outside backs to do the real fun work, which is going to be very exciting with who they have recruited here. Lola here from Tasman is the first one off the list. John Stewart coming in from Fiji, and of course Yamada from the Force. Now Yamada had a very, very good Rugby World Cup as well for Japan. He'll be the one who will look to spark this team into life. Their fullbacks, they've gone with one man outside of Japan, with Ruan Vujun coming in to the team. They also have Sasakura from the local side, the Wild Knights, coming in with some sevens representation to his name for his international country, Japan, where he could be a rising star if he can get that sevens experience into the 15s game. Now for the Sunwolves, I think there's a lot that's unknown about this team. I think they have recruited very, very well, picking up players that strengthens where they are weak. I mean, the back row especially, out wide, although Japan has a good reputation for some very fast swingers, I think it's the power and the strength that they may lack, which have, I think, again, gone very well, picking up good number 8s, good back rowers, a couple of very good locks as well, and some big fancy pants finishes outside that could put the Sunwolves team quite a nice season. Now, before I really looked at this team and the other teams in this conference, I thought the Sunwolves are going to struggle. I've looked at odds at various betting agencies got on, and not many people rate the Sunwolves at all. But I'm going to say it out here first. I don't mind this team. I think their international experience, playing at that high level against the best players, is going to serve the majority of this team very, very well. Picking up players where they're weak is going to do even more for their team. I'm picking them to come in second in Africa 1. Their weaknesses, it's got to come down to the newness of their position here and whether they can establish themselves as a Super Rugby side. It's going to be tough. It's going to be very, very tough. And I think this Africa 1 conference isn't the strongest. I think it's going to suit the Sunwolves because they can learn their trade. And I think they're good enough to get some wins as well. Their coach will be Mark Hammett. Now, is he the right man for the job? They think so. But after his time with the Hurricanes and all the stuff that went down there, and then the success they had when he left, Was that the way he established the team before he left, or was that effect of him leaving? I guess we'll find out. Mark Hammett, he's a very hard-nosed coach. I guess that could be good for the Sunwolves, as it could force them to really adapt to the style of play and learn what they need to know. They had to go outside Japan. I think they had to get someone who knew what Super Rugby is about. So in that perspective, I think it's a good pickup to get Hammett. But is he the right man? We will find out. There's a lot of unknowns about the Sunwolves side. I hope we learn a hell of a lot over the next few months, and I hope they do quite well. I think with those additions they've brought in, it looks a very tidy squad, and I'm excited, absolutely extremely excited to see this team in action. Alright, so that wraps us up here for our review of Africa 1, the 4 sides coming in, where I think they'll finish again. Stormers 1, Sunwolves 2, Bulls 3, Cheetahs coming in number 4. They are my thoughts, they are my views and opinions. You're entitled, of course, to your own. No one is wrong here at all. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Good to get a good discussion on about what everyone thinks about these 4 teams going into 2016 Super Rugby season. Right, that is me done and dusted. Thank you everyone for tuning in and watching, of course. Leave me your thoughts and I'll see you all for our final pool. It is Africa 2 and it looks bloody good. So, hope to see you all there for that one. Until then, thanks for watching and take care.